Now, all right, we're live.
Right, we're live. Let's go.
Well, not really live, but the recording has started. All right,
We're recording
perfect. Episode
show number
4.
4. Yeah,
Here we are. Yep, two days before Christmas, which is wild. It's crazy. Like we finished up college the semester last week, and then now it's Christmas. It's great.
it's kind of weird how
Thankfully, I
close
got
to
all the
Christmas
gifts
the
that I got in
semester
time.
went. Yeah,
Yeah,
I did my
yeah.
Christmas
It
shopping
really is
like
strange.
the
Like you'd
day
think,
I
especially
left.
for like a Christian school, they would like do something else. I don't know.
Yeah, you would think so, honestly, but
Mhm.
we've only been home like 3
Anyways.
days, which is so weird.
It's quite odd, yeah. Anyway, so we're gonna have a little bit of a shorter show, hopefully today. We're gonna start
Yeah,
off by discussing our theology topic for this episode, which is predestination. So, Thaden, you want to give us
we
a rundown on that issue?
yeah, absolutely. So we kind of hinted at this topic in our last episode in our discussion of baptism, and I think we talked a little about denominational sympathies and what denominational direction we might be moving. And I mentioned that I'm a Calvinist, and the only thing holding me back from being a Presbyterian is my position on baptism, which we discussed last week in the podcast, in the show. So, one of the, I don't know if you could say it's a main belief, but one of the beliefs that Presbyterian Christian holds is called Calvinism, which generally deals with God's sovereignty, which extends to a lot of areas, including his general work in the world. And today we're going to be talking more specifically about the extent of God's sovereignty in salvation and the salvation process and what's known as predestination. So I'm going to bring up here this probably the most relevant Bible verse for this, which is Romans 8:29 through 30 there, which this is the one that all the Calvinists love to talk about. And it reads, "For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified." So this deals with predestination or election, as some people call it. They're basically the same thing. And you can't really deny that like some form of election exists because it's like pretty obvious in the Bible. Like it's talking about people God foreknew whom he predestined. So obviously there's something going on here in which God knew the people who were going to be saved before they were actually going to be saved. And the Calvinist position on this doctrine would be that God specifically chose those people to be saved. That's known as predestination.
All right, and then what is the opposing view?
So
Just to give an explanation of that.
the Arminian view on the topic would say that yeah, God has perfect knowledge of everything that's ever going to happen. So he did know beforehand what people were going to be saved. But he knew that because he has a knowledge of what our choices were going to be. So God's not like looking forward in history and choosing what people are going to be saved. He's looking forward and seeing what people are going to voluntarily choose to follow him. And then electing those people. The word election kind of lacks meaning in the Arminian view because it basically just means God knew, God saw beforehand who was going to be saved. And then that's the Arminian view of election, which is not really what the word election means. But that's how they try and interpret that word to get around the idea of predestination.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of an interesting topic for me. I kind of consider myself sort of, and I don't really want to say in between position because I do think that I trend towards the Calvinist position, but may not
Mhm.
necessarily use some of the language that they would use. Like
Sure.
for example, like I can't deny the sovereignty of God, and I think that is obviously at play within people's lives. I also don't think it's evil to predestine people. I've heard pretty, I think, good arguments. I know from my systematic theology class that I took, the professor's a Calvinist. What's his name
Dr.
again? Didn't jot
Halstead,
him too.
right?
Helseth, yeah, yeah. He made a pretty good
Calvinism is
argument.
like the only thing he talked about, which is kind of
It is,
hilarious.
yeah, it is. I like that class. That was probably like my favorite of the Bible classes that I took for sure. Just because it like felt like fairly in depth compared to some of the other ones that felt more like general.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, I feel like that's kind of the issue with Calvinism is that in some cases it makes it harder to justify God being good. And I think that's one of the arguments you hear from skeptics. You may also hear it from some anti-Calvinist Christians as well, just because like it does seem a little bit crude to suggest that God chooses people specifically to be saved, and then the rest are basically condemned to hell.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult doctrine. And to be fair, the Arminian has a much easier time constructing a theodicy. The meaning of the word is literally justify God. So he has a harder time. The Arminian has an easier time explaining the problem of evil. How can evil exist if God is good and all powerful? Because they can rely on their belief in unlimited human free will, whereas the Calvinist limits human free will to the extent that God is quite a bit more responsible for the goings on in the world, it does make it a little bit harder to divorce God from evil. But I do think it's possible to do so. And I also think the Arminian view tends to rest a little too heavily on the idea that if if God is constantly at work in the world and we don't have complete free will, then God is the cause of evil. Like, I don't think that's the case, obviously, because I'm a Calvinist, and I don't think that it has to be the case either. Like, I don't think it's a good argument, and I think it tends to just be more of an emotional appeal a lot of times than actually looking at what the Bible and like philosophy and logic actually say on the matter.
Sure, I feel like I mean maybe give like a brief overview of how a Calvinist would approach the problem of evil. You can probably articulate it much better than I can.
So there's a couple things they would generally appeal to. For example, while Calvinists believe that humans don't have what's known as libertarian free will. In libertarian free will, a human can at any time choose to do absolutely anything within his physical power to do. Calvinists don't believe that, primarily because we believe that the human nature is completely corrupted by sin, so that any decision we do make is going to be influenced strongly by our sin. But there's still a measure of free will. So humans are still making their own choices. We're still morally responsible for what we do. And so one way the Calvinist often tries to get around the problem of evil is saying that while God doesn't directly cause evil, he allows it to happen. So for example, God might see that a particular individual is going to do some evil thing in the future, and he might essentially say, okay, I could stop this, but I'm just going to let this individual have his way and then allow it to happen. So God isn't causing it, he's just not working to stop it. And then also at the same time, God can still work to bring about good through evil. Like, this is pretty clear in the story of like Joseph being taken off to Egypt and sold into slavery, and then God does a miraculous work through that and turns what people meant for evil into complete good. So even if God sometimes might allow individual evil events to happen, he's still going to ultimately work to bring about good through those events.
Sure, I think that's pretty good. And I guess like going more into like my perspective, my general perspective is that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter a ton whether predestination is true or not. It shouldn't at all impact the way that we live our lives. We shouldn't
Yeah.
just assume, oh, these people are the elect are going to be saved anyway, so we shouldn't go preach the gospel. Obviously, that would be completely unbiblical. So, like that, kind of like what I think of it as is that predestination is true from God's perspective, being outside of
Sure.
time, but as humans living within the boundary of time, the way that we live our lives, predestination is essentially unnoticeable and irrelevant when it comes to how we conduct ourselves, how we live our lives, how we evangelize.
Yeah, I think that's fairly valid. I mean, I I really love Calvinism and I really love the idea of predestination. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say, no, it's not completely irrelevant to the way we live our lives. And I don't think it is. But like in practice, we should still be sharing the gospel as if everyone does have the opportunity to accept
Hmm.
it. Because like we don't know who the elect are going to be and who they're not going to be. And another thing is
Right.
that God often works through like non supernatural means. So he's going to work through the evangelist to bring an elect to faith, which means that you and I and our dear viewers need to be doing evangelism.
Right. Perfectly said, I think. Is there anything else we want to discuss regarding this, or get the
Um,
gist of it?
I think for just discussing predestination, that's probably a pretty fair summary. I expect the Armenians in the audience, if there are any, won't particularly like some of the things we said. And Calvinism is a much larger topic than
Right.
just predestination. But I think if we're just covering that one particular doctrine, that's probably a pretty fair and concise coverage of it.
Sure. Sure. And I guess like maybe just like kind of like you could explain like tulip, like the 5 points of Calvinism, and like in some ways they all kind of relate to
Yeah,
one another. Obviously, that's like a simplification of overall Calvinism, but
yeah, it's
I think
important
that
though.
it might be relevant to mention what those are.
Yeah, so we let me test my memory and see if I remember all the points of tulip. So T is for total depravity in tulip, which means that humans are all absolutely sinful. It does not mean that we are as completely sinful as it is possible to be, and it does not mean that we will never do anything that has a generally positive effect on society, but it does mean that on our own we are completely unable to approach God or do anything that is not sin. So you have the human condition essentially, which is that humans cannot on their own come to God. And this point's generally agreed upon by all Christians. You can't really deny total depravity and be an orthodox, non heretical Christian. Then the U is for unconditional election. So that this one's related very specifically to the idea of God predestining people, choosing specific individuals. And the idea is that the people God chooses, the reason he chooses them is not based on anything that those individuals will do. So predestination is not based on merit, essentially. It's not based on works, and it wouldn't make any sense for it to be because we can't even do any good works per total depravity.
Hmm.
Alice for limited atonement, that I actually disagree with limited atonement, so I'm a 4 point Calvinist. But limited atonement says that on the cross, when Jesus died for our salvation, he only died for the sins of the elect. So like the non-elect just are not covered by Jesus' death. That's kind of a controversial one. I don't agree with that
Yeah.
one, and we can talk a little more about that if you'd
Yeah,
like.
that's easily the most heavily debated one. That's why like
Mhm.
4 point Calvinism is a pretty common
Yeah.
phrase you'll hear.
When I first
And
like started getting into Calvinism, I was like, no, that can't be true because it wouldn't be fair. And I don't really have that objection. It wouldn't be fair anymore, but I still think the Bible, there's passages in the Bible that say Jesus Christ died for the sins of all people. And I just don't think the general Calvinist way is to try and get around all people, meaning all people really work.
yeah, sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. That obviously I haven't studied Calvinism as in depth as you are, so a lot of these views I'd have to probably look into before gaining my own position. But yeah, and then let's see, I is what
I
Is
is
irresistible grace,
irresistible
right?
grace.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's correct. So what that means that the people whom God has predestined, I can for a second I thought I had a point wrong. I did not have a point wrong. Yes, irresistible grace is connected to what's known as effectual calling, which means that when God calls an elect person to salvation, the call will have such a power and will change that individual's heart in such a way that that individual will always become a Christian. Like the call to salvation cannot fail. The people whom God predestines will always be saved, is essentially the meaning of irresistible grace. And then you have
All right.
perseverance of the saints for P, which is also a pretty non-controversial one. I know Arminians who agree with perseverance of the saints. And what that essentially means is once saved, always saved. So if you've truly accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, while you may go through a period of time where you maybe wander away from the faith a little, you will ultimately be saved because your heart has been transformed.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that's probably like the least controversial of those positions. Though I found that it can be somewhat controversial if you're debating like skeptics or those outside the church on that
Yeah,
particular issue. But yeah, I tend to agree that with the idea of once saved, always saved. I think that I think that makes a lot of sense. Of course, like kind of goes into question like how many people believe they were saved, or can you trick yourself into thinking you're saved or something like that? It's a little bit tricky in that sense, but yeah, I think the idea is sound.
yeah, I think so. And I think that's probably like the point of Calvinism that's like most relevant for the day-to-day life. So it's if people are ever doubting their salvation or anything like that, the doctrine of perseverance of the saints can be a great comfort to an individual, I think.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so I think that's probably pretty good for the conversation. We're gonna
I think
go
so,
ahead and
yeah.
switch to talking to our movie talk that we do every week.
Mhm.
So let's see if you want to pull up the slides here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the trailer for James Gunn's Superman movie. Because I have some thoughts about it, and I'm sure you probably do as well.
You
So
probably
first
have
of all, I just
more
want to say
thoughts than me on this one because I have not actually seen any DC superhero movies, but I can talk
you've
about
seen The
them.
Dark Knight, though. That's
True,
about it,
true.
though, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll probably have a little bit more thoughts on it. It's also been like all over my YouTube feed, people discussing this trailer. So it's kind of it's interesting. So I mean, first of all, I'd like to point out that um, the superhero genre is not doing very great at the moment. It's There's been many flops, or just many films falling short of their needed budgets to break even and like that. And then of course you also have like the Marvel shows on Disney Plus that have largely been flopping even worse than the movies have because people stopped
Mhm.
caring. So then here comes Superman next year. I actually think that this movie could be important for the future of all superhero movies, not just for DC. Obviously, for DC, this is the first major release for the new DC universe from James Gunn. So a lot of it goes off of that. But I also think that we need this movie to succeed if for just general superhero films to get people back interested into the genre to show that there is still something to get out of it instead of just random product slop to consume for the newest to like keep up within the universe or something like that. And
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I guess I like obviously okay. Like, I'll just nitpick a little bit about the trailer. First of all, I think obviously I agree with most people. Yes, Henry Cavill would probably be preferable. Sure, like yeah, there's the argument he's a little bit older. Fine. I do think that he was the best fit for the role, even if he didn't really get to fully realize the role because Snyder didn't do the best job with Superman, and I don't think there's anyone that's going to try to argue against that. But I have seen a few Snyder Bros try to bash this film, especially this actor for Superman. I can't remember his name, as well as the suit. But I think that generally speaking, most people do think this will be an improvement on the Zack Snyder rendition of Superman. So there's that. What else do I want to mention? I guess like okay, my personal opinion, yes, I think the actor's fine. I think that he definitely fits the role. I thought he was pretty. I thought even like in the trailer as Clark Kent, he looked pretty good. Even if he has like the like Gen Z broccoli hair or whatever. But you know that's a different that's a different conversation. He's still he gets like it makes him look clumsy. I think so. I think it works here. My biggest issue the suit, I like the suit. I like the trunks. I know the trunks are controversial, but I think they're fine. My biggest issue with the suit is going to be the logo. Now, I believe it is a actual comic book logo that was used, but I still think it looks like an oversimplified Superman logo. And obviously, generally, when companies oversimplify their logos, it's not a great thing. I kind of feel like that here. Of course, that's not enough to ruin the total suit for me or like ruin the film. I've seen people absolutely melting down over the suit, which I thought was kind of kind of pathetic to watch, honestly. But I think the suit's fine. As far as the actual movie, um, from what the trailer, from what I gathered from the trailer, it almost feels like there's too much happening. Like especially towards the end of the trailer, where it just is like flashing different characters and like it's like cameo bait left and right, which I felt was like okay, like it makes me a little bit worried. Obviously, you have like James Gunn who made Guardians, so and Guardians had a ton of new characters they have to introduce, and I thought I did a good job there. So I think James Gunn can work that in, but I also part of me wishes that this would be a grounded superhero Superman film, just focus on Superman, and it probably will be. Those other characters might just be cameos or setting up future projects. Hopefully, they don't take too much away from the story, but just the amount they were shown in the trailer just seemed to be some sort of cameo bait for Superman or just DC Comics fans. So I don't really like how much is actually happening, but um, a lot of it does seem pretty good. Um, I guess I thought it was great the amount that they showed between Superman and Lois. I think that that's going to be a very important dynamic for the film, that romance relationship. I mean, it's like a straight white relationship. Like, how often do you see that nowadays? Um,
Facts.
so I think that that's good. I think yeah, what crypto the dog. I don't really think that he's needed in the film. I do think that choosing to have crypto was a James Gunn decision directly. Um, just because like I think I heard somewhere that the dog in the trailer and the movie is based off of James Gunn's real life dog. So it's a bit of a self insert. Of course, Crypto's a real comic book character, but I'm pretty sure it's a different breed of dog, even. But it's whatever. Could be a bit of a distraction. Personally, I just hope that he's not the Crypto's not going to just be in the film too often. It should just be focused mostly on Clark Kent, Superman, his story, and all of that. And again, like there just feels like there's a lot happening all at once. I'm assuming you feel the same way.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest critique of the trailer because, like, I know very little about the DC superhero universe. So I'm watching this trailer, and suddenly there's just like 15 different characters who I think are important, but I have no idea who they are. And they're all just like flashed at me for like half a second each. And I was just like, wait, what the heck is even going on here? I don't understand this. So I don't know if it'll be a very accessible movie for people like me who it's like I don't really know anything about DC. I there's definitely the danger that it just becomes cameo bait or it's just like nonstop absurd action or whatever with a bunch of like ooh recognizable character moments, which is what we don't want it to become. But on the other hand, James Gunn has he has a lot of experience with the Guardians movies, directing movies where there's a lot of really quirky characters and a lot of stuff going on. And all three of the Guardians movies are phenomenal. So he obviously knows what he's doing at least a little bit in this area of filmmaking.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like James Gunn, like I'm a little bit skeptical. Like I don't think he's the greatest person in the world, but obviously he's proven to me with the Guardians, which is my favorite MCU trilogy,
Yeah,
that he knows how to work with characters. Now, this obviously that's also a team of characters, so he gets those character back and forth dynamics. I think very are done very
mhm,
well in the Guardians movies. This film, there's probably going to be a lot less of that banter. Hopefully, I just hope that it is a little bit more focused on just a singular character or just smaller group of
yeah,
characters. So I really hope that Gunn is able to use his knowledge from making superhero films and be able to do it and be able to like reformat it into more of an individual superhero story surrounding Superman. He's Gunn is very good at writing characters, so I'm hoping that will of course also come into here because if Superman is done right, I think it definitely will save the superhero genre to a certain extent. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see. This is probably a movie I will see pretty early, just because I'm somewhat excited about it, though cautiously. But yeah,
yeah. I think it's an exciting movie for sure. I will say the parts of the trailer that kind of the parts that I thought were the best done were like the Superman Lois parts, which is I think what the movie should be focused on. So if those
hmm
parts are kind of looking good before we even see the movie, that's potentially promising. I don't think I'll see this movie very early or maybe even at all unless it's getting like absolutely crazy reviews. But we'll see, we'll see.
yeah, and yeah, you haven't seen the original Superman, right?
No, I have not.
No, yeah, and I like that movie. Obviously, it's older, it's a little bit corny at times, but I think it's a really
Mhm.
good movie, and it shows that
Sure.
like it doesn't have to be super complex, world threatening Avengers level threat type of thing. It could be Superman, and you can have Lex Luthor as nemesis, and that I think that's enough. And I think that that's going to be hopefully the core of this, or maybe they're setting up Lex for a future outing or whatever. Obviously, Lex Luthor is in the trailer, so we know he'll play a part. And I really don't know who the big bad's going to be. And I think that that's fine. I thought that one thing that I did like is that I really don't know too much about the plot from this. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to follow your familiar Superman story beats, but I don't know too much. I also really like how little dialogue is in the trailer. I think that that's good to kind of draw a little bit more into maybe some of like the shots, the cinematography, and making doing more showing than actual telling, which I think is always a good thing in movies and definitely in trailers. That at
Yeah,
least makes it
absolutely.
more appealing to me.
And this wasn't a trailer either where it felt like you saw the entire movie from just the trailer. It felt to me like there was still a reason to go and see the movie. Like I don't know what's happening in this movie yet. You mentioned we don't know who the main villain will be. The trailer was well done in that it hints at the movie and generates a certain amount of excitement for the movie without revealing everything about it.
Yeah, and obviously this is the teaser, so they'll probably release a true trailer later on that'll probably
That's true.
reveal more than I would like, but it is what it is. But yeah, overall, I'm cautiously optimistic about it. I hesitate to even say that, but we'll see.
We'll
We'll see.
see.
I really hope it's good. Um, just because I think a good Superman movie would is very much needed for obviously the genre. You could even say for like entertainment as a whole.
Yeah, for
But yeah.
sure.
All right, and then what else did we do last week? We watched a movie, right?
Yes, we
We
watched
watched
A Few Good
yes.
Men on Wednesday night.
This was our first viewing, both of us.
Hmm.
So yeah, you can go ahead and start talking about. what you liked or
Uh,
what you didn't like.
Honestly, I was really impressed with this movie. I really enjoyed watching it. It's basically a courtroom drama. So it follows, what's the main lawyer's name?
Uh,
It follows Tom
oh,
Cruise, who is
Tom
playing a
Cruise. Yeah,
lawyer
there you go.
he representing these two Marines who are accused of murdering a member of their company at a military base in Cuba, I believe it is. And most of it is
Yes.
this kind of courtroom moral drama. And it's actually, I expected it to be kind of boring, I guess, when I learned it was a courtroom drama, because like lawyer law, boring. But it was actually
Hmm.
incredibly compelling. Like I was pretty riveted throughout this entire movie. There were some really surprising twists and turns, and just like the interpersonal dynamics in the courtroom were honestly spectacular.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of was hesitant to watch the movie originally. I feel like it might have shown up in our like trying to decide what we were going to watch discussions or
Mhm.
whatever, and then I kind of just put it off. But like, yeah, I was expecting it to be a little bit more boring, but I was glad I was proven wrong. I was actually quite engaged, almost too engaged. I
Yeah.
forgot to grab my ice cream or any snacks. Um, so, that's usually a good sign if I'm able to avoid eating food during a movie. That's pretty engaging. It was very weird seeing Tom Cruise in a non-action role.
For sure.
It certainly felt strange. Obviously, it's also a much younger Tom Cruise before he really became like a major action star. But yeah, that was quite great. I thought the performances were all quite great.
Yeah, I thought so. And I was also really impressed with like the messaging of this movie because I feel like in a lot of movies, and particularly modern movies, the messaging is fairly heavy-handed. They're presenting like one very precise, very kind of preachy or unbending idea. And I felt like in this movie, they left a lot of room for nuance and like their discussions of honor and the value of duty, the value of the United States, the value of the military. That there was
Mhm.
like a lot of nuance in the way they presented the messaging. And at the end of the day, it was inspiring, while at the same time being somewhat kind of lightly critical of the way things are, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I really liked how the moral aspects of this film were handled, leaving it sort of
Mhm.
up to discussion, up to viewer interpretation. Like who do you really side with morally, something like that. And I agree that like it felt like there was just it felt like there was much stronger moral, like, I guess, discussions within this film than that you'd see in like
Yeah,
modern films or whatever.
for
I
sure.
feel like there was just it was not very at the forefront. Which I definitely really liked. I like movies that make you think and that can
Mhm.
start discussions like that. Obviously, like we could talk about Sicario and how you could yeah, that could do a similar thing.
We should talk about the Cario at some point because we both
We
love
should.
that
We
movie.
should. Yeah, it's like I wrote my like movie like ranking and like Sicario
Mhm.
made the top 10. Like
Oh, wow.
yeah. That was
It is a
obviously it could
really
be
good movie.
revised because like there's a lot of movies, but
I
yeah,
need
yeah,
to do my top
anyways,
10 at some
back to
point.
this movie.
I guess if I had one criticism of this movie, I felt like maybe the end resolution came on a little bit fast. Like 1 minute you're in the middle of kind of like this very dramatic, intense courtroom exchange, and then the next minute it's like, oh, the movie's over. Wait, what? And like, I'm not saying the ending wasn't satisfied because it was, but just the speed with which it came on was a little bit jarring almost.
Sure, sure.
Like not a major criticism, definitely, but it felt a little bit weird while we were watching
Yeah,
it.
I can kind of see what you're saying now that you mention it. I didn't really think that during the viewing, but yeah, I guess like I don't really know what I would consider a criticism for this movie. like at least like a well thought out criticism, which probably just means it's a good movie. I think
Yeah, it is a
I
good.
want to say I ranked this around 30th in my ranking or something like that. Maybe a little
That's
bit lower.
pretty
I'm not sure.
yeah.
Obviously, like that could just be recency bias, but yeah. Anyway, so I guess I'm gonna say I rate this probably an 8 out of 10.
That's
I think
what I'm gonna give it
that's
to, an 8 out of 10.
yeah, 10, yeah. Yeah, 10. And, like obviously like this is not exactly my go-to genre, but it's pretty good, you know. It's really well written, well acted, and obviously it kept me engaged, which is a huge thing as well.
Yeah, it's just like an all around great movie. I very much enjoyed watching.
For sure. All right, so we decided to do something a little bit more fun for this episode, and we're going to do a tier list. Specifically, we're going to be ranking the Infinity Saga MCU movies. So I have a tier list here,
Mhm.
and we're going to try to go through this fairly quickly. I don't want to discuss 10 minutes on every on every movie, so
Yeah, we'll try and do it fairly quickly.
it's a little bit late. All right, so we're just going to go in order here. This first one is Guardians of the Galaxy. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking this is like a mid to low A tier movie, probably.
Mid to low A. I'm saying A as well, so we can just put it there, and we'll decide what
Yeah, we can
goes
do
whatever.
within tier
Okay.
rankings if we want.
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I feel like
I
this is you go first.
yeah, I feel like I like this movie more than most people, but I also cannot deny that like it's also kind of an uninteresting, not
Mhm.
super rewatchable film. But I do think it's fun, and I liked it the first time I saw it. Uh, like obviously, like yeah, it's not like my favorite, so I'd probably put this. I it's probably gonna be lower B, upper C.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, this just feels like such a forgettable movie to me. The only thing I remember about it was that I vaguely enjoyed watching it. But, like, beyond that, I really don't know what happens in this movie at this
All
point.
right, I
So
think
I think C tier or maybe
you
low
think
B
C
tier
tier's
just for
good.
being forgettable. Yeah, we can put it there for now.
We'll put it
Because
C
B
for
tier is
now. So
kind
we could rearrange if we want.
of.
We'll see. Captain America: Civil War is next.
I think this is an S tier movie, honestly. I
S tier
love Civil
movie.
War.
I also love Civil War. I do think it is S tier. Oh gosh, I have to make this a little bit smaller. Something like that. That looks fine. Okay. Yep. So
That
Civil
works.
War.
Yeah.
We'll start Civil War at S tier. That'll be our first S tier.
First S
Captain
tier.
America: Winter Soldier. Instant S tier for me. It is my
I
favorite
agree.
MCU film. Um, for you, would it go above or below Civil War?
So I feel like from like a critical perspective, is it a better movie? Yes, it's a better movie than Civil War. I
Okay,
personally probably enjoy Civil War more than Winter Soldier, but I would say you should put it above.
put it above it. Okay,
Yeah, right there.
sounds good with that. Doctor Strange. I'll start. I guess I think it's a little bit underrated as far as Marvel movie goes. It's a fairly generic superhero story, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think the visuals are pretty cool in it as well. And I think that there's a pretty it's an interesting enough story arc, of course, for Strange, but of course, like obviously that's it's kind of your general superhero story arc. So nothing too interesting with it, but I do think it would be a B tier for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not like a crazy good movie, but like I actually remember the plot of this one. It was good enough for me to watch it a second time. And like even though it's a pretty standard story, there are some unique twists with the specific characters. So I think B tier is very fair.
B tier's fair. All right. Ant Man, first Ant Man.
Oh, I'm gonna
This
say A
is
tier for first Ant-Man,
A
honestly. I
tier.
like the first
Interesting.
Ant-Man. It's funny, it's enjoyable. I mean, it's not like
I think
a super crazy movie, but I think low A tier is decent.
Yeah, I think that has a lot of heart to it personally, though. Like, I also think it's somewhat of a fairly boring film compared to like some of the
Sure.
other ones. So I'd probably put it in C tier. So if you want to compromise and put it in B, that's cool with me.
Yeah, let's put it in B tier then.
Above or below is Doctor Strange.
We'll put it below Doctor Strange.
Below Doctor Strange. Okay. Thor Ragnarok. I think this was my favorite MCU movie for a bit. It does get worse with every viewing, at least for me. Um, so like that's a big factor. Is like Captain America: Winter Soldier. I always enjoy Civil War, same thing. Guardians, same thing. But Ragnarok, not so much. But it's hilarious and it is quite a ride all the way through. Obviously, we can have the conversation about Thor and like what they did, like demasculating Thor or whatever. I personally don't really care. I do think that was
Mhm.
much worse of a problem in Love and Thunder, but oh gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, fortunately, we're only
So
doing Infinity Saga movies here, so Love and Thunder will not be appearing on this tier
won't
list.
be able to put Love and Thunder in F tier. Dang. All right, but anyways, what's
I
your
think A tier
Ragnarok
is fair
opinion?
for
A
Ragnarok.
tier,
I'd put it in A
above or
tier.
below Guardians?
It's below Guardians for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Endgame. This is like the most random order. I don't know if it's alphabetical or not. Probably is.
Uh,
Actually, no.
Endgame's a tough one.
So Endgame was my favorite movie theater experience ever until I had an all-day Lord of the Rings marathon in theaters. Of course, like what can beat that?
Right.
And then Endgame also gets worse with subsequent viewings. It's also really, really long, and you can feel that in those subsequent viewings. So it's definitely gone down a lot in quality for me. However, I do think it's also a very strong end to the Infinity Saga, at least on the like emotional beats. So I think just for that, I do think it deserves A tier.
I would put it in A tier as well. Like, it's just a good movie. It's not as good as the two movies in S tier, I don't think, and it is really, really long with some it kind of extended action sequences that maybe get to be like just a little too much at times, but it's a really heartfelt and touching conclusion to the Infinity Saga
Mhm.
ultimately.
Do you think it's good here behind Ragnarok?
Yeah, I definitely put it behind
I
Guardians.
think so as
I
well.
I think you can argue about whether it's better or not than Ragnarok, but I'm fine with it behind it.
Okay. Was this? This is is this Homecoming? Yeah, this is Homecoming. Spider-Man Homecoming.
Wait, Homecoming's Infinity Saga, I guess it is.
Yes.
Man,
This is not
what
No Way Home.
happens
This
in
is
Homecoming?
Homecoming.
I haven't seen
Homecoming.
Homecoming.
It's like the Vulture. Have you not seen Homecoming? Really?
I swear I have. I know I've seen Homecoming, but I have no recollection of it
So he
whatsoever.
fights the Vulture. He like goes to like what else happens? It's like Tony's in it a couple of times. Tony Stark, and it's kind
Oh,
of like that
yeah.
dynamic of that. This
Okay,
is
yeah, now I remember.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
at one point he has to like put a ferry back together or something that he chops in half somehow, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I
Anyways,
don't know why I
so I guess
remember
for
that
me,
from
um, like it feels weird not putting it in A, but I think I'm gonna put it in B, upper B tier.
I feel like because I set a precedent of putting Ant-Man and the Wasp in C because I didn't remember it, I have to suggest this one goes in C
Okay.
as well. But we can
All right.
compromise with
So
like lower B tier or something.
lower B. Where do you
Yeah,
want it here? In
lower or
between?
mid. Yeah, between is
We'll just
fine.
put it
It
in
probably is
between.
a better
Okay.
movie than Ant-Man, and my memory's just failing me right now.
Okay. Sure. Original Iron Man. I have not watched this one in a long time, but I know it's pretty good. I'd probably put it A tier.
I think it's an S tier movie, honestly. Low S or high A tier.
I think that's definitely fair. I mean, obviously, it kickstarted the MCU, so
Yeah.
obviously that holds a lot of weight. I think just for me, maybe not the most interesting of the MCU, so I might just put it lower
Sure,
for that
that's fair.
reason. Yeah. But so do we want low S or upper A?
We can put it in upper A just because I feel like we shouldn't get S tier too crowded.
Sure, sure. Above
Honestly,
Guardians,
though, I feel like I prefer Guardians to the original Iron
I
Man.
probably
Guardians is
do as
better.
well. I would say I think that's a good spot for that. All right.
All right, what do we got
Okay, first
next?
Avengers movie. This one's tricky. Um,
This is tricky.
because obviously it was like the first major superhero team up movie, and it was really good for what they had. Is it S
I
tier
guess
quality?
I don't
That's
think
where I
it is.
hesitate a little bit.
I think my critique of it is that it's just too simple. Like this movie has some of the most. It has some really memorable moments. It was obviously like a huge landmark in just the superhero genre as a whole. It
Hmm.
just kind of it gets a little boring for me, honestly. So I don't feel we can put it in S tier. And honestly, right
Yeah.
now, I'd rather watch any of the movies in A tier than the original Avengers movie.
Honestly, I do agree with that last take there. So do we want to put it in? I think A is good. But do we
Yeah,
want to
low
put it at
A.
the end of A? Low A?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Ultron. Age of Ultron.
Okay, so hot take, Age of Ultron's kind of a bad movie. That's probably not even a hot take.
That's not a hot take.
I just don't enjoy this movie. I think it's a C tier movie.
I kind of agree, which is kind of a shame because I think there's a lot of potential with Ultron as a
Mhm.
character.
Yeah.
I see most people will say this is the weakest Avengers movie. I think there is still some good into it. But yeah, I think C is fair. Do we want it ahead or behind Wasp?
I'd put it behind Wasp. I feel like Wasp has more heart than this movie.
Sure, sure. Original Thor. Thor
Oh,
1.
I
I think
think
it's
it's a
kind of
solid B
boring.
tier movie.
Solid B. I think I go lower B on this one. Not very
I would
interesting, and I
agree.
don't really have
Yeah,
any desire to rewatch it. So lower B is good. I think
agree.
I would maybe even put it upper C, but
I'm fine with
I don't
Upper
know.
C as well. It's not a particularly interesting movie, but like it's
I think
not
I'll put
bad.
it upper C. Actually,
Okay,
I'd rather watch Ant-Man and the Wasp and
fair enough.
Ultron than that. I'm gonna be
It does
honest.
trust.
It's like that rewatchability, like even if we're talking about like how good the movie is, like I still don't want to watch it.
That's fair.
Captain Marvel.
I actually haven't seen Captain Marvel.
You haven't seen Captain Okay, so I'm reading this alone. Wow. Obviously it's an F tier movie. It, no, it's not great. It's really not great. Is it F tier?
We
I
have to
wish it
put
would be F
something
tier.
in F tier. We need
Something
at
in F
least one
tier.
F tier movie.
Okay, yeah, I don't know, D tier. I think this one might be more of a D tier. It's
Okay, fair
it's
enough.
like it's not interesting like at all. And it's kind of just like a CGI mess at times, but you know what? It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I guess is what I'm going with. First Captain America, which I think
Um,
is the weakest of the trilogy. Most people
yeah,
would probably agree with that. What would I rate it? I'd say I'd probably rate it a B tier above Ant Man is where I'd go because I still think it's quite a good movie. Just it might be a little bit slower at times.
I haven't seen this one in a while, so I can't say I remember it the best. I'm tempted to put it in C tier behind Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Interesting. So should we compromise with that?
What if
Low
we
B or upper C?
what if we take Ant-Man out of B and put it behind Wasp, and then we put whatever movie we're rating now, the original Captain America, between those two?
Between Wasp. So you're
Yeah,
putting the first Ant-Man below Ant-Man and the
I'm
Wasp?
dropping. Yeah, we're moving first Ant-Man to below Ant-Man and Wasp and below Captain America.
Okay. Do these all belong in C tier?
Uh, I don't
Or
know.
could we move a couple to B tier?
We can move. Why don't we move those first two up to B tier?
All right, moving those to B tier. All right. What is this? Iron Man 2. I
That
barely
that's a
remember
movie that
anything about this movie.
exists. Let's put it in
Um,
D tier above the Marvels, or at the very bottom of C
Captain
tier.
Marvel, not the Marvels. The
Whatever.
Marvels
The
was
Marvels would
worst.
be sub F tier if it were on this chart. We actually did watch the
Oh,
Marvels that time, remember?
we did. We watched it in our dorm, and then oh, it
It
was
was not.
awful.
It was really
Although it
bad.
was
They
fine though.
even
We just
set
made
up.
fun of it the whole time.
They even
Yeah,
set up the chessboard wrong in it.
that's right. You pointed that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, was this Thor: The Dark World? Oh gosh, very
I
not
kind of like
great.
the Dark World, honestly. It's not a good movie. It's not a great movie, but I feel like it's better than Captain Marvel at least. I guess I haven't seen
Okay, we
Captain
can
Marvel.
move it up to above Captain Marvel.
Okay, thank you. I like Loki in this movie. Loki is great in the Dark World,
Sure.
and everything else is just so
It's been so
forgettable.
long since I've seen it, and I don't remember like anything. I don't know, but yeah. Okay, we're just going with that. Iron Man
That
3,
works.
also not great, but definitely
Yeah,
better than Iron Man 2. I would probably put this in C tier, lower C tier.
I agree.
Okay. Um, it's probably above the quality for Thor, I would say. That's what
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with.
probably so. That works for
All
me.
right. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
All right, guys. So, Guardians
The
of the
best
Galaxy
Guardians
Volume
movie.
2 is the best Guardians movie. It's an S tier movie.
S tier movie. I agree. I agree. Maybe not to these level, not to the level of Civil War,
Can
Winter
we put
Soldier,
it above Civil War? I think it's better than
Civil
Civil
War. All right, you
War.
idiot.
This
Like
might very well be
like we
my
both
favorite.
agree. We are like the two people in the world that think Guardians 2 is the best of the Guardians trilogy.
I
It's
think if people rewatch them enough, they would agree that Guardians 2 is the best.
I think Guardians 2 has the best emotional beats
Mhm.
of any of the Guardians movies and most of the MCU movies. The stuff with
I
Yondu, with Rocket, stuff with obviously Peter and his dad, that relationship. You have like Gamora and Nebula, the sisters getting together, and that it's absolutely phenomenal.
It's a
Could you
great
argue
movie.
the plot's a bit of a mess?
Yeah,
Sure. The Sovereign are just kind of there. They're just they're really just there to set up Adam Warlock in Guardians 3, which was a disaster. But
mhm.
the Adam Warlock, not Guardians 3, was great. But um, there are
Honest,
there's some problems within the movie if we're talking critically. But I personally still love the movie regardless.
I think that if you gave me every Marvel movie ever made and said which one do you want to watch more often than not, Guardians 2 would be the one I want to watch. I love Guardians 2.
All right, that's our hot take of the tier list. I think.
Yes, Guardians
All
2,
right,
best
Black
movie.
Panther. Black Panther is next. I I like Black Panther. Um, However, I also think it's a little overrated at times. I think Killmonger is a fantastic villain, super captivating, steals the show. Chadwick Boseman does a pretty great job, but I think that there's just also a lot of hodgepodge kind of in between of the film. At least that's kind of my opinion of it, and I don't know. It
I think
what are
it's a
you
B
feeling?
tier film.
B tier.
Like
I think
honestly, it feels like it's a pretty straightforward superhero film. There's not anything the I don't have any really substantial criticisms of it. It's just fairly bland. So I think B
Okay.
tier or lower A tier is
I'm
fair.
gonna. I think upper B tier is good. Will we put it where do we want to put it? Put it above
I
or
would
below Doctor
personally put
Strange?
it below Doctor Strange because I remember Doctor Strange more, but
Sure.
my
I think
memory of
that's
the movie
fair. I
is not.
think that's a fair position there.
Okay.
Uh, First Hulk. You haven't seen this one, right?
I haven't seen it, so this is another solo rating for
All right,
me.
it's bad. Infinity War. Infinity
It
War is a masterpiece. Best
I think it's S
Avengers,
tier.
definitely S tier. Best Avengers movie. Very genius decision to make Thanos the protagonist in the film. Instead, like, because like it is Thanos's movie, and I think that that's what made it work so well is focusing so much on Thanos, while still also obviously having the heroes fight Thanos. I think that the way that they set it up is really really good, and yeah, definitely S tier. Where do we want to place it up here though?
This is really hard. Um, I feel like it's better than Civil War, honestly.
I would say I would rather watch Infinity War than Civil War, so yeah, I agree with that.
Ah,
I would
I
say
can't choose whether it's better than Guardians
I
2
would
or
say that I do
Thunderbolts.
like it more than Guardians 2. If I had to
Okay,
pick between them, I'd probably pick Infinity War most of the time.
sure. We can
So we
put it
want to do
above
that.
Guardians 2. Yeah,
Put it
I
above
think it's a
Guardians
better
2.
movie, to be fair. It's a better
Yeah,
movie than
that's
Guardians
definitely
2.
true. All right, and then the last movie in the Infinity Saga is Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Oh, what is that the one with
I This is the
what
one with
happens?
Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. Nick
Oh,
Fury. Well,
Mysterio.
the scroll. Nick Fury is there. Yeah, Mysterio.
I think it's a C tier movie. This is the first
I
superhero
like.
movie I saw in theaters. I thought it was pretty unmemorable. Like, it's
I
not a
yeah,
bad movie. It's just
no.
entirely unobjectional and unoffensive and dull, in my
I
opinion.
think I would probably put it top of C or lower B.
That's fair.
Obviously upper C makes it balance pretty nice.
Yes, you have a nice
So yeah,
symmetrical shape. You can put
it's
it
a
upper C.
symmetrical shape. So
I
yeah, I
do
guess there you
vote,
have it.
though, if we move a movie to F tier just for fun. Pick a D tier movie and move to F tier.
Uh
Hulk is an F tier movie. All
Hulk
right.
is an F tier. Yeah, we'll just go with that.
Why not?
Perfect. All right,
It
here is
ruins the
our
shape, but
tier list, our combined tier list for the Infinity Saga. Obviously, if you go past the Infinity Saga, there's a lot more down here towards the
yeah,
bottom, especially when you like yeah, Eternals, the Marvels. Uh, yeah, those two especially come to mind. But yeah, anyway, so we're gonna just get on to our last topic here. That we're already over almost an hour. That took a little bit longer than
yeah,
anticipated.
gonna be a longer
Anyway,
episode than
so
expected. That's okay.
that's fine, perfectly fine. So we're going to discuss our last topic, which is discussing, I guess, controversies surrounding Christmas, kind
Yes,
of broadly.
because it is Christmas time, even though you might not know it from the things we've generally discussed so far.
Yeah, yeah, we felt like we kind of like decided to just throw this towards the end. We kind of just wanted like, what is a culture war topic? And we're just like, oh, it's Christmas in 2 days. Let's do that. So
Yeah.
obviously, like there's a fair bit of controversy surrounding Christmas, both like talking about like secular versus Christian Christmas, or you can even just talk about like infighting within the church regarding things about Christmas, like Santa or
Mhm.
by even like Christmas trees.
Yeah, or even if you should celebrate Christmas at all in some
True,
cases. Like
true.
Christian cases, I mean, too. Like there are Christians who think we shouldn't celebrate Christmas.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess first of all, we can just discuss like because like I know for me, like I get a little bit annoyed when about secular Christmas traditions. I kind of just cringe at them. I really, for the most part, dislike secular Christmas music, especially not that it's
Yeah.
like musically bad, but just that like I don't like Christmas being hijacked to talk about your true love or something like that.
Uh, so I have two kind of fun stories. This year, I actually legitimately considered writing a letter to the Pope and asking him to anathematize that Mariah Carey song. And I'm not Catholic. I'm not Catholic in the slightest, but I hate that song so much that I think that we should band together as the broader church and get it anathematized.
What about the Newsboys version that's supposed to be directed towards Christ?
I honestly haven't heard it.
It's literally the exact same song. They just actually make it about Jesus. Because like all I want for Christmas is you, and then if you're talking about Jesus, then it kind of works. But yeah, oh my gosh, that song
I
it's
hate that song.
memed like out of this world
Mm.
during the holidays. Everyone pretty much hates it, but somehow it always ends up topping the tracks during Christmas
I don't
every
know why
year, year after
no
year.
one likes that. It has to be like the people with the most NPC music taste of all time who are listening to this like on constant repeat for the entire month of December. Because everyone you meet is like, no, it's a bad song, it's overplayed. And yet somehow it still tops the charts every freaking year.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's quite fascinating, but yeah. That's just my one of my personal just annoyances is that secular Christmas like even like the Christian radio stations will play secular Christmas songs like, occasionally, which sometimes bothers me. It's not like oh it's the end of the world, I'm gonna stop listening type of stuff. I'm just like really come on, like what
yeah.
happened to what the true meaning of Christmas is?
And I think kind of on the other half of the coin, you have like some really good classical Christian Christmas music like Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Everyone knows
Right,
the first verse of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, but the next two verses are actually like really, really good and like really theologically deep and correct. And like no one's talking about them. And it's kind of sad, honestly.
right. Yeah, and I mean, if that's kind of the case, is a lot of those classical Christmas music, like I don't like sometimes I don't even know any verses, and then obviously you have the later
Mm,
verses, which less and less people know
yeah.
for whatever reason. And of course, like you also have some Christian Christmas music that's just cringe and just like over the top type stuff, but
Any
I don't know,
like the
just like
people who
contemporary
make
Christian music that happens to be
yeah,
Christmas music as well. Yeah.
the people who make CCM music should not be making Christmas carols. It does not sound good. Please stop.
Based. There you go. Now, obviously, like some other issue is like you have like the Christians that believe like Christmas is pagan or like
Mhm.
things like a Christmas tree is pagan. And obviously there's
Yeah,
that discussion, which I think is just a ridiculous discussion.
sure.
Which because I mean like what's the heart behind what you're doing? I think that's what
Mhm.
should matter the most. Like, oh, Hitler drank water too. Type of like it feels sort of like that type of argument in some way. That could be like a logical extreme of it, but it
We
kind of
should
feels like
write
that. Like
that.
just because something,
That should be our quote of the episode. Hitler drank water too.
I should have put it on the whiteboard,
You should have
man.
put it
We're
on the whiteboard.
talking about the way I want to get the whiteboard involved one way or another on my channel, but we'll see how that goes. I've been working a little bit, planning out what I want my backdrop to look like. Right now, like obviously, I'm covering this one section here, so we'll see what I end up doing. But I got still quite a bit of a mess in my room after moving back.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Any other Christmas controversies in your opinion or hot takes you
um,
have?
I kind of agree with you on like the should we celebrate Christmas or not. Like the one thing I'll say is if you feel really, really convicted that you shouldn't celebrate Christmas, like then just don't celebrate Christmas. Like I'm not gonna make you do it or
Right, right.
something. I'm not gonna shove Christmas down your throat, but like please don't be the guy on the street corner or on Twitter who's like, no, Christmas is pagan. Like I understand where the arguments come from. I understand why people don't like Christmas trees, but like we've said this before on this podcast, there's really not a demon behind every bush. And
Right.
I don't think you're going to go to hell because you have a tree in your house for 3 months during three weeks during the year or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the whole conviction thing. Like, if you don't want to do it, you shouldn't necessarily have to do it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. And obviously, like, that just goes for just like any individual Christmas tradition as well. Like, if you don't want to like have Santa with your kids, then I don't think you should
Right.
have to. And
One thing
that's
I've
one thing that I'm
really
kind of questioned about is like,
Mhm.
will I do Santa with my future kids? I don't know.
I've thought about that too. I'm not sure what I'll do yet either, but one thing I have really appreciated this year is kind of like the Protestant reclamation of Saint Nicholas. Like I've seen this everywhere. They're like, yeah, Santa slapped Arius at the Council of whatever,
Yeah,
whatever. Like honestly, I'm all for it.
yeah.
It's
The memes have been
hilarious.
crazy.
They've been crazy, but it's fun. And like if people are learning their church history, I think that's awesome. Like that's great.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean the memes about Santa deniers are going crazy right now.
Yeah.
This could even come back to like Redeem Zoomer starting it all by mentioning
Probably.
the situation with Arius in one of his videos because like some of his videos go like mega viral,
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
especially in like Christian circles. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's been something that's been kind of enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with that, honestly.
hmm Yeah, yeah, it's cool. This I hope this Christmas goes well. Um, we'll see. I got going to my what is it, my grandparents' church for Christmas Eve tomorrow.
Oh,
So
nice.
I think that that'll be good. Their church is pretty extravagant, not in like your mega church way, but more in like a traditional architecture sort of way. It's quite
It's kind of
cool.
fun though to visit from time to time.
hmm Yeah, definitely. Now, of course, I still have to wrap stuff.
Ah, yeah.
Need to get to that. Yeah.
I think I'll be going to my like hometown rural Lutheran church for Christmas Eve and they always have like the Sunday school put on a Christmas play or something, which is it varies from year to year how good it is, but we'll
Sure.
see.
hmm Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we end the episode?
I don't think so, no. I don't have
No.
anything
All
at
right.
least.
Sure. Fair enough. So I guess we will wrap up here. Definitely our shortest episode, but honestly, I think that's fine. Like an hour, I think is reasonable.
An hour is
For
a
these,
very reasonable
at
episode.
least for the time being. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So if you did watch the end, thank you for watching all the way in. I hope you enjoyed. Merry Christmas and have
Yes,
a
Merry Christmas,
great
everyone.
time with the new year. If you're off from school or work or whatever, enjoy that time off. And obviously, remember Christ is Lord. Remember the reason for the season.
Amen.
Amen.